Hi, this is Trudy DeWitt from Calix, and welcome to today's webinar, What's in Your Truck? The Smarter Design for Managed Wi-Fi that Creates Faster Installs. And we're really happy to have you with us today. We'll officially kick things off in just a moment as folks continue to join. So give us about 30 seconds or so. Okay, let's get rolling. And I just want to start with a few quick housekeeping notes before we get started. Today's session is being recorded, and a copy will be sent to everyone who's registered. So if you miss anything or you want to share it with your team, you'll have one in your inbox soon. So give that about a week. And you'll also see today a Q&A panel, and that's the place for you to drop in your questions at any time. We'll try to answer as many as we can after the presentation portion is completed. And if we don't get to yours, we will make sure that we do via email at the, at our earliest convenience. The chat is open as well, so share your thoughts and reactions along the way, and we'll love to see that as well. We invite you to participate in the 3 poll questions to gain insights into your direction and how we can help you in the future. This webinar is designed to be interactive, insightful, and worth your time, and we're really excited to dive in. With that, I'll hand it over to our moderator, John Casadani, Senior Product Manager at Calix. John, the mic is all yours.
Thank you, Trudy. Welcome, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the country or in the world. I'm hoping that our topic here is a provocative topic that you all are considering on your day-to-day basis. The title here, What's in Your Truck, really is a play on the idea of what you have to service, what you're responsible for in servicing your customers, whether residential, business, MDU, MTU style. We have a pretty packed session today. Over the next 45 minutes, we'll have a discussion that it is going to walk you through various aspects of product selection, what deterministic things you need to think about when you're selecting a product. And the most exciting part of this, I think, is going to be a transition to actually seeing the product in action. So as you look at the agenda, we'll cover quite a few of these topics up front. The network design will happen after we cover some of these early topics. I will be asking you to participate in this session. There'll be 3 separate polls that we'll be inquiring about, and we're hopeful that you will help us respond and contribute to the overall discussion. I'm really excited to be able to introduce Jerry Ola from Hamana Networks, who is a pretty well-respected individual in network design. Jerry's been around for about 15 plus years in designing and deploying networks. You might have seen Jerry on other presentations or any topics relative to network design or at any conferences. So with his expertise and the expertise of the tool itself, we're going to be able to illustrate some of the really unique capability sets of both the tool set and, of course, our product when applied in these particular designs. So with that, I'm going to move forward and start out with the poll question to see if we can get things going here. So the number 1 question to use when you're thinking about how you deploy a customer premise equipment, how many different systems are you currently offering your customers? In other words, when you get a opportunity for a particular service type, how many different systems are on the truck in your company that you might want to consider delivering to those customers? And as you guys fill out that information, we'll be able to share with you the results. It is kind of interesting is that it's not unique that there's no perfect number, I should say, for this answer. It's just kind of eye-telling of how broad some of our customers are considering the deployments are. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the poll. Looks like we've about half of you that submitted, and so we're going to share the results. And in the results, you can see that the lead is 39% of you are saying more than 3 or at 3. 5 or more has got about 12%, 4. So nobody offering just one particular product. So with that, let me continue on and let's start off with just talking a little bit about some of the concerns the broadband provider has. So this is not to state that these are the three emphatic ones that you deal with, but these are popular ones that come up when doing research and having discussions with our customers. So everybody is concerned about network availability, reliability, and performance. So as an operator, those are things that keep you up at night and make sure that everybody is clicking along, your services are being delivered adequately, and that the performance is top notch for those customers. Secondly, there's this idea of cybersecurity, and I want to point out that this cybersecurity is not on the endpoint where we talk about, phishing attacks or people that are trying to infiltrate your particular system and gain access to your private information. Cybersecurity, what's emerging is the idea that there are bad actors who are using your access, your actual connection speed to repopulate information into the networks. This is a really prevalent issue that we're dealing with in the marketplace and that we do see come up in our polls and our discussions with our customers. The third and final thing here on this list is managing costs. Probably shouldn't be number three on the list. These are really in no priority order. But the idea is that what are the highest areas of cost in delivering a particular service from each of our rural providers? So I'm going to bridge off of this to start talking about some of the key components of what you have to deal with. So statistically, what we're looking at is that for any of the broadband providers to run a fiber to a particular household, it can range anywhere from $500 to $800. That's a fixed cost. There are probably ways to improve on those numbers. Perhaps you guys can share some of your thoughts in the chat about what you've experienced or what you see, but that's a pretty consistent number, again, being reported within the consultants and analyst reports that we look at. The second item here is a pretty important and pretty significant statement. So what it's basically saying is that as you look at your revenues across the year, what percentage of that revenue is actually going to be attributed to paying your support teams, dealing with operations and administration activities, upgrades, whatever the case might be. So your net profit possibly is somewhere in the neighborhood of 40%. Maybe it's less than that. Maybe it's a little bit more than that, but this is more of an industry average that we're looking at roughly 60%. Certainly an opportunity to cut some of that down to be able to introduce more margin into your opportunities. The final bullet is relative to customer equipment. So there's two statements here that to look at. So customer equipment, depending on the type of service that you're offering. So let's take gigabit as the example. The cost of that equipment to be able to connect to gigabit is going to be roughly $50 to $150, depending on the vendor, obviously, that you choose and the type of capabilities that that particular product has. The industry as a whole is rapidly moving to multi-gigabit. And in that realm, you're now looking at much more expensive CPE equipment, and it could be anywhere in the neighborhood from $200 to $500. So just a simple poll looking at the industry, we see an increase in multi-gigabit year over year, growing pretty steadily. I think it's over 12% now of the industry is at multi-gigabit speeds. So if you're not there at this point, you probably will be hitting that at some point in the near future. So let's talk a little bit about why the equipment cost, the customer equipment cost, is a target for an opportunity to reduce costs, to limit the way that you approach the purchasing and distribution of those products. So as you look down through these three bullets, the real statement here is that whenever you can simplify, whenever you can reduce the overall process, the acquisition process, the maintenance of all the inventory, the maintaining all of the inventory within your shops, the statement that this whole webinar is about what's in your truck, what do you have to carry in your truck. These are opportunities for you to simplify based on your opportunity and the markets that you're dealing with. The efficiency is probably a no-brainer for most of you. the less you have to worry about in differentiating products. You're going to gain improvements on in terms of training. Your troubleshooting time will be reduced because it will be so common to you to understanding how the product works. And then the repair side too, again, replacing the products if you have to replace them in the field because they're available. And the last part is to gain a consistent level of quality of service and reliability, to get real familiar with the products that you're utilizing and delivering a really consistent expectation with your customers about what you're delivering from a service point of view. So I'm going to take that information and we're going to transition into a situation where when you're dealing with Calix, you have multiple products to select from. This is not a chart meant to overwhelm you. It's the reality of our product family and our consistency in delivering new products to give you an opportunity to select the one that is the most optimal for your service and for your marketplace. So no need to really go through into details of each one of those, but I want you to consider this for the next few minutes. As we consider the opportunity, you are dealing with a couple different factors. We'll call them influencers. You have the idea of what type of coverage you need, what size of coverage, how much square footage, what are you dealing with in terms of construction materials that might affect those products. The other side of the story is you have to adapt to the performance level that you're committed to, whether that's the speed of the service, the fiber coming in, whether you're dealing with latency or the number of devices that you're supporting within the customer's location. What happens though is that you also have this other factor that we're rapidly showcasing within the industry, and that is based on a per segment basis. So residential is everybody's business. I'm sure all of you have a residential offering. Some of you are bridging out to look at persona-based offerings. You probably have heard that several times from Calix in the past. Others might be just considering other markets, whether you're going into business space, small and medium businesses, whether you're going into the municipal world, whether you're dealing with outdoor parks or amphitheaters or ballparks. All these are factors in terms of how you're going to approach the selection of the product that you're moving forward with. So I'm going to introduce a couple of ideas and walk you through some steps that we use when we talk to our customers. First, I want to quick look at two examples of how the industry is moving. So consistently, we see the left-hand side. Again, this is probably the statement you hear most from Calix is that we don't want you to be a speed offering provider. We want you to be an experience provider and from a lifestyle standpoint. And we're going to show you how we would consider you rolling into that world. So let's look at the marketplace. And this is not all encompassing. I'm sure many of you can look at this and maybe poke some holes in some of the philosophy. Would encourage you to offer some of that in the chat or some of the questions that you might have on how we actually segmented this particular market. But the blue circles represent two things. Number one, it represents what customers might be looking for or what type of customer you're dealing with. It also is representative of the overall size of the opportunity in a lot of cases. For instance, medium-sized family households are fairly the sweet spots within all the rural service providers. So it represents a much larger portion of the overall segmentation, but you have many others that you need to deal with. Budget conscious customers at the very end. Maybe they're more simplistic type of connectivity that they're looking for. And then at the very high end, you have a small group of gamers or tech enthusiasts who really love to deal with the speeds, to work with the technology, to implement capabilities, whether it be AR, VR functionality, whether it be work at home individuals that might need constant video conferencing to do their job or large file transfers. So we're going to take that modeling and we're going to apply it to this idea of delivering a service that might be good, better, best, or at the premium level. Again, they were not stating that this is the way you have to look at it. It's just the concept of bringing these thoughts together. When you look at the low end and you need to deliver the adequate level of service for a customer for them to be satisfied. It might be a lower speed customer, and that's how we're showing this in terms of performance is at the very end. And the coverage is probably relatively small. So you're looking at maybe a garden apartment. You might be looking at a square footage house of less than 1,000 feet. It could be a number of things that factor into that. And as you move up into this graphic, you can see that the coverage getting better with the performance actually improving, getting into senior individuals who want to do video conferencing with their grandkids, or individuals that are interacting with just email and maybe doing Facebook and things that are very common within their world. And then you get into small size family households, medium sized family households, where you start seeing an increase in devices. And then as you move through this particular thread, you're looking at, oh, now we're into opportunities that might bring in MDUs. And it goes on and on as we look at the curve. And again, looking at the premium level as more of the top end where coverage is important as well as performance is going to be really the optimal solution. So I'm going to overlay this with some product just to kind of align your thinking a little bit on how we would position our products. So this is primarily the Wi-Fi 6 portfolio. The Wi-Fi 6 portfolio has been broader within Calix's world. So those of you might have some of these products. Most of you might have these products. Some of you might have some of our previous versions of technology. Not trying to represent all of them. I'm just giving you the last, let's say, year's worth of view of product. But you can see how we've mapped the technology to the coverage and the performance mapping here on this chart. The U63 recently introduced would be an ideal product when you're dealing with those circles that are intersecting, all the way up into the medium-sized family households. Some of you are familiar with the U6T. It's a 10 gigabit performance capable product. It is really ideal for when you get into larger installations, large family homes, or you need performance in order to do your job. Let's say remote workers that are functioning there. The P4 is sneaking in here because that's an ideal product for when you're considering moving into the MDU segment and supporting customers, whether they be in apartments or within the common areas of your MDUs. And some of you actually have taken shipment of the U10XE. Again, another 10 gigabit unit. The reason why it's creeping up into the premium world is that it has flexibility in terms of the connectivity that you want to use. So we have a pluggable SFP capability that allows you to grow in performance as well as give you the capacity you might need for connectivity to the devices. So that's Wi-Fi 6. Let's just take a look at our Wi-Fi 7 storyline. It's fairly small comparably to the Wi-Fi 6 products, but it's growing pretty rapidly. We've made some announcements in the last couple months, and there's two products that you currently have access to. We have a product called the 7U10T, which fits at the very high end, and we have the 7U6, which was announced back in early July, will be part of the 25.3 release. And the 7P6, which comes out a little bit later this year, that is geared, again, these are all Wi-Fi 7 units. The challenge here is, do you need Wi-Fi 7 for these particular scenarios? We would love to say that everybody should be moving to Wi-Fi 7. That's not always the case, though. Wi-Fi 6 has a pretty large lifetime. I have other charts that I've shared with our customer base that indicates the adoption rate of some of the technologies takes time. So as we grow our portfolio, you're going to see this chart updated with other products that are going to fit a little bit more across the board. And if I click one more time, show you the combination of products that are fit, whether it be U6, whether it be the Wi-Fi 6 scenario or the Wi-Fi 7 product family. So again, a snapshot to consider when you're looking at developing a strategy for what system you'd want to use. Do you want to have all 6, 7 of these units within your purview? I don't think that's the best way to go. What we're suggesting is look at your sweet spot, consider what product you might want to consider for that sweet spot, standardize so that you can benefit from cost savings associated with not only purchasing one or two of the systems, but also what it offers to you from an administration standpoint, from the overall installation process, the repetitiveness that you would go through over and over for your customers. So with that, I'm going to ask a second poll question for you to participate. Question is relative to your market opportunities. So there's a mix here. There's 6 different options. And I'm really curious of how broad you guys are moving in terms of your opportunity size. So we know that all of you are basically in the residential space, and we certainly expect that. But as you fill out this, consider the future. Consider possibly what you might have to be consuming in terms of the product in order to address those particular opportunities. And I'll give that a couple more seconds. And it's interesting, if you guys are watching the poll on the screen, I'm going to end it here pretty shortly, and you're going to probably not be so surprised by some of the numbers. I'm a little bit interested in the fact that the commercial and warehousing and logistics is getting equally as numbered as our large venues. So I've stopped the poll and I'm sharing, and you guys should see the results. The top end, which again, if we take away residential, we're looking at small business MDUs, pretty much at the 60% range, and the commercial opportunities, along with municipal properties, which is actually pretty cool that you guys are considering those as well. So thanks for your contribution in those polls. Thanks for listening to this upfront piece. What I'm going to do now is that I'm going to transition conversation over to Jerry Ola and allow him to give you some perspectives on the network design and strategies. Over to you, Jerry.
All right, thanks, John. I appreciate it. Yeah, so I'm Jerry. I'm one of the kind of product experts, technical experts here at Hamina Wireless. We do, yeah, primarily network planning tools, but also site survey tools as well for doing your validations, troubleshooting, helping you with optimizing networks. So really tools for anybody that's designing, deploying, managing wireless networks is kind of our target customers. But let me, yeah, if you want to just advance to the next slide, that's just a little overview of the company itself there. But if you want to go to the next slide, John. Yeah, as far as the network planner tool here, so I'm going to do a demo for you here and show you how to use the Hamina network planning tool. And you can get started with this for free. If you haven't checked out Hamina before, it's literally a couple minute sign up process on the website, and it's cloud-based network or browser-based network planning tool. So yeah, literally get started with the tool in minutes. No credit card or anything like that to get started with it. Just to play around with it, and even do a design of any type of projects that you might have that are especially in the residential space where 3 or few access points. You can use the tool for free. So yeah, let me get my screen share going here, and I'll show you the network planner tool here. All right, so let's jump into the Hamina Network Planner. And again, this is browser-based, so I'm just running this in my my web browser here. And then what I'm going to do is show you the tool here in a second. So if we go to the other tab here, I've already got my account logged in, and I just have a project that I was working on previously pulled up. But let's start from scratch just to show you how easy it is to get started with the Hamina Network Planner. And I've got my colleague here, Joel, on as well to kind of help me because I want to also show you how easy it is to collaborate. So even if maybe you're not the wireless expert, or maybe you want to bring in some other expert to kind of consult with, or somebody else within your organization to maybe look at a project, we can do things like that as well. So what I'm going to do here is just create our new project here. So I'm going to call this one our Calix MDU. And we're just going to do a quick MDU design here. So with a brand new kind of blank slate here, I'm just going to drag and drop a couple floor plans in here. Now, when it comes to floor plans, these can be anything: JPEG, PNG, CAD files, PDFs, you name it, right? Anything you can get your hands on, even photos of a fire escape plan, just to show you like how well this thing works. So these are JPEGs that I pulled in here, so nothing fancy about these. But the real power of Hamina is its ability to like interpret these floor plans and understand from like an RF propagation model, what do we need to kind of model in this environment. So in this case, it's identified, okay, that's a floor plan. It automatically set the scale for me. it also identified that there's walls and doors and things like that and drew those in for me. So very easy to get up and running with, and really minimal time and effort to start modeling up an environment and being able to simulate how that signal is going to kind of propagate through this space. And obviously I can go in here and I can tune all the knobs. By default, it's saying, oh, okay, I think there's some drywall, there's some wood doors. I can change that. I can customize the materials that are in the environment. I can add my own materials, but it's got a pretty comprehensive database here to help you get started. That's going to cover most common kind of construction materials that you're going to run into. But even if from there, like I noticed there's some elevators here. Right now, it just identified those thinking that's drywall around that elevator. So if I want to kind of tune this model here, for example, of selecting those walls, and I'm going to say, okay, those walls, all that heavy drywall right now that it's modeled as is actually supposed to be elevators. All I have to do is select those, swap those out, and now you can see we've got some elevators drawn in here. So really at this point, we're ready to start doing our RF modeling if we want. Also, before I forget, I'm going to share this project. So I'm going to share this with my colleague, Joel, and that way he also has access to it. He can kind of keep tabs on me. He can, get in there and make some changes, but maybe that's just, for project management. Maybe they want to just kind of be able to track the progress of the design as they go through. They want to be able to check in and see, what does the bill of materials look like as I build this out. So you can share that project with either individuals or with teams of people as well. So very easy being in the cloud to collaborate in real time with other folks. But let's say we want to go ahead and place some APs in here. So I'm going to go ahead and select Calix here for our vendor, and we're going to choose from our nice extensive database here. And I know John was talking about a few different APs here in his list. So let's try a couple of different ones for this design to kind of play around with to see what might make the most sense. So maybe we want to start with something like a 6.3 here. You can see right away we've got the antenna propagation model here modeled for you in 3D. So we can kind of see if we put this thing on top of a table, that's essentially where the signal is going to go. The red or the darker the color, that's more of where the energy is being focused. So if we look at the bottom of it, we can see, yeah, from the bottom, not much signal kind of projecting downward. It's all kind of out in what we call like omnidirectional. If we look at it from the top, we can see, yeah, it's really going in kind of all directions around there. So a nice omnidirectional kind of pattern, but it's meant to be put on a table. So that's going to be our default kind of mounting. And then we can set the height of what that table is. So if you're putting it on top of a bookshelf, for example, you could adjust for that. But let's just place one of those in the environment here. And we'll place it kind of near this elevator. Maybe we would put it in the studio area, maybe near like a wall. And now we can see immediately kind of what that signal propagation is going to look like based on kind of the default parameters here of the radio transmit power. So this is where things start to get pretty interesting, pretty powerful, right? Of being able to that quickly kind of simulate the signal and the coverage of this AP. So let's just kind of focus in on just having one access point in here, 1U63, and kind of what that signal propagation is going to be. And then let's go down to like our client experience piece of this. So what I'm going to do is select a simulation here of a client. We can simulate different types of clients, maybe an Android phone. We can specify, what that phone's capabilities are. John talked a little bit about their new Wi-Fi 7 product lines. Maybe we'll want to do some comparison with this particular model, not being a Wi-Fi 7 capable AP. Even if we have a Wi-Fi 7 capable client, obviously it's going to work perfectly fine with that from a compatibility standpoint, but we're not going to get all the benefits of like the higher MCS rates, the higher data rates that you'll get with something like a Wi-Fi 7 client. However, you can see even with this AP not being Wi-Fi 7, we're still getting very good speeds, very good throughput out of this one access point. However, as we start to build this out, what's going to end up happening is we're actually going to see that data rate probably go down. And the reason for that is going to be right now we're using 80 megahertz wide channels. And that's great if that's the only access point that's in this space. But in reality, especially in like an MDU space like this, obviously we're going to need a lot more access points. In addition, we've got to factor things in vertically as well. There's actually a second floor to this building, and there might be, other buildings you're working on, let's say, that have 10 floors. We need to factor in the vertical signal propagation as well. So what I mean by that is as we start to build this out, if I just start to place, maybe several more APs in here, and we notice one of the things Humina is going to start to do is suggest different channel widths that we can use based on the number of APs that we have in this environment. So you'll notice as I continue to add more and more APs into this space, eventually it's going to kind of tip the scales and it's going to tell me to use like a narrower channel width. So as of right now, we're at 80 megahertz wide channels, but as soon as I add maybe another AP like on the floors above or below, it's going to start to reduce that. So maybe we put one like in the study area here, maybe in this area. There you go. Now you can see here, as I kind of started covering the main areas here, because we've got APs on both sides of this, they're starting to actually interfere with each other with those wider channels. So now it's actually dropped our channel width down to 40 megahertz wide channels, which is a good suggestion. That's what Humina is recommending here, based on some of the other automation features that Humina is going to have to help guide you of what kind of channels you should use, what channel widths you should use in your deployment configuration. So in this case, we're actually saying try to use as wide of channel as possible because it's going to mean higher data rates, higher throughput, until we start to run into the radios themselves kind of interfering with each other. And actually, on an environment like this, not only do we probably have our own APs to compete with, but we probably have other technology in that space that we're likely going to be competing with as well. So that's another kind of consideration that can be taken in, especially when you do like a site survey. It's going to show you what other types of interfering sources might be in that space. But let's say we're good with this now, and if we just want to go back and validate our client, sure enough, yeah, our data rate did kind of cut in half because it did drop our channel width in half based on the number of APs that are in this environment. So with this current kind of deployment where we're using the U63s, you can see, yeah, this might be a kind of an optimal design for this type of space. And maybe that's going to be our starting point. And then we'll look at swapping that model of AP out for another model, maybe like a ceiling mounted P4 as well to compare. But let's say we want to cable all this up, right? So one thing that we could do is I can input something like a switch or an IDF or an MDF to indicate where that is on this particular project. So let's say maybe this storage room here, that's where our IDF is located. So I'm going to go ahead and place that on the map. And notice what happens is as soon as I place an IDF on the map, it's going to route cable paths to all of these APs. Now, probably not the most realistic. I see I've got like a cable going through the elevators here. So that's not going to work. But we can clean all that up. And actually, I might leverage Joel for the sake of time here. I'm going to consult with him to be my cabler to actually draw some cable routes for me into this project. So he's over in Finland. I'm over here in the US, and I can actually leverage him to consult with to actually do some cabling for me. So yeah, with the IDF, that's where our equipment is going to be stored. So yeah, MDF is our main distribution frame. IDF is our intermediate distribution frame. So this is like usually where the ISP comes into the building. That's where your MDF is going to be. With the IDF, that's going to be like off of that. So typically you're going to have your MDF where the main equipment comes in, and then maybe on other floors throughout the building, you'll have some intermediate. Simpler than that, just specify something like a switch, right? That might be even more realistic for this type of deployment. You may not have like a full rack and IDF and everything. We might just have like a single switch or something in that closet. And that's perfectly, definable as well. Yes, intermediate distribution frame. Thank you, John. All right, so let's say we've got now this all defined and we need to clean this up. So Joel, are you able to do some cleanup of my cabling here?
I did. Yep. I threw some cable
Nice.
trays in there, and then it just snaps all the cables into the cable trays and routes
Beautiful.
them to the closest IDF, MDF, or switch. So There you
Yeah,
go.
so
Oh, I
here,
missed one. I'll get that last one.
yep. So here Joel drew in these. I could have done it obviously as well, but I was, chatting away. So while I was talking to you guys, explaining what an IDF was, Joel was doing all the hard work here and defining all these cable routes throughout the building here to kind of suck those cables into these cable trays to tell the cables or tell the equipment like how to get back to our switch here. And that can be for power sourcing equipment or just for data. In this case, since we have some tabletop APs. But now that we've done all this nice legwork of, modeling up this environment, all our walls and doors and all that kind of stuff, the cool part is we can run through all sorts of different scenarios really quickly, right? And even with our cable trays and cable routes and everything defined in here. So let's go ahead and swap out these APs. So I'm just going to say, let's select all those APs. Right now we have all the U6.3 gigaspires. And let's go ahead and swap those out for maybe like even something a little more drastic of what about if we want to try putting some APs on the ceiling? We'll keep the APs maybe in their current locations and I'll make them ceiling mounted. And now we can actually see, okay, if we put these APs on the ceiling, we can actually move these around, right? We can get these more in maybe a more optimal kind of position. And notice how with our cable trays already defined, our cables automatically kind of recalibrate themselves into those cable trays. So that's kind of the beauty of setting all this up, setting up where your wired equipment's going to be, where your APs are going to be. And as we kind of move these around, you can see how they kind of snap into our cable trays and everything here. So we can kind of figure out exactly where we want to put our APs. We can also simulate different things like power levels. So now we're using a PoE powered device. So if I come back to like our switch here, you'll notice under our power and cabling details, with swapping out that AP, it actually is going to show me how much power I need at my switch to be able to power all this equipment. So no longer are we using like a tabletop, plugged in access point. We're actually using ceiling mounted access points to show what that configuration is going to look like. Another thing that we could do to help us with some of this is, let's say if we want to simulate different models of APs, I can actually go to the auto plan here and we can choose different models of APs and we want to just run like a simulation. You could do different models that you want to simulate with and just tell it to do a design that meets specific criteria. So as long as it's more of an omnidirectional AP, you should be able to use this in this type of environment. So what it's going to do here is it's going to try to take all the information that we've kind of input into this project so far of the environment, but then also the requirements of saying we're going to have a specific target of kind of good Wi-Fi. So if we need to design Wi-Fi for an entire building and we want to do it with very little effort, this way we can do this very quickly, right? So here it's placed all the APs for me in all the areas that are defined currently as what I would consider to be in scope, but maybe there's areas that we want to mark as out of scope. So like right now, it's even trying to cover, let's say like the elevators. So in this case, maybe what I want to do is actually say the elevators are actually going to be out of scope. We don't need Wi-Fi maybe in there, maybe the same for the stairwells. So you can mask those areas out from a project and actually kind of input, what areas are needing coverage, this laundry area, let's say, just to mark a few other areas as maybe out of scope. Maybe if it's like mechanical areas, you might want to also mark those areas as being out of scope as well. So in this case, we'll mark this area as out of scope in this project, and then you can rerun your auto planner to try to design around those areas. So very
Hey,
easy to
Jared,
run through multiple scenarios.
Jared, there was one question in the chat from Anthony Simmons
Yeah, please.
asking, with the exclusion and attenuation areas, the predictive also considers wall DB measurements or obstructions, correct?
Correct. Yeah. So in this case, in this particular project, what we're factoring in is if I go to the walls, we're actually selecting like if I select one of these wall segments here, we're saying drywall, and that's a 5 dB loss is what we're saying. So that is attenuating the signal at 5 decibels as it passes through those interior walls. In addition, we also have modeled things like the doors, and that happens to be a wood door, which also is about the same attenuation properties as like a heavy drywall of 5 dBs. But then if we go over to like our elevators, big difference there. That's 10 dB of attenuation for each of these elevator walls. So very high attenuation in comparison to the rest of our kind of interior walls. And we can see that here, if I select like a single access point, you can see how, yeah, we don't even really get any signal out the opposite side of the elevators here versus like where we have just our walls. You can see it's kind of evenly spreading throughout this space.
Thank you.
I wonder yeah, thank you for the question. Let me show you one more thing here around AP placement. So when we talk about like, especially getting into like Wi-Fi 6, Wi-Fi 7 in particular, and specifically things like 6 gigahertz capabilities, I want to show you here. I'm just going to place a single AP on here. And what I want to show is, let's say, what if we put the AP maybe at the front of the unit here to start? What I want to show you is how big of a difference this could have on the user experience. So right now you can see if we install the AP here, but if the users are primarily going to be using the internet and the Wi-Fi kind of in the back part of the studio here, what does that mean to the user experience? One, I can see right here, most of our energy, if you think of it from that aspect, most of this energy is kind of bleeding out into the open area here. We're losing a lot of that signal in this back area. So if I select like a client here, and we take an iPhone, and we'll say in this case it's going to be 6 gigahertz and Wi-Fi 7, and let's say we put that user back here, we can see they're still getting a good user experience. And again, this is with the Wi-Fi 7 capable 7U10T in here. So I kind of, just to show you like with the Wi-Fi 7 piece of this, how close these clients need to be able to get that full performance, especially, if you've got somebody that's more critical, going to be using some really high performance Wi-Fi or really needs the highest performance possible. Watch how close they need to be. So as I take this client and we simulate this client experience, notice how quickly that connection starts to, not necessarily deteriorate, but at least, the speeds start to drop, right? So to be able to get the full speeds, the full benefit out of these APs, which is crazy. I mean, we can get over 2,000 megabits per second when the user is right next to the access point. Look at that, almost 3,000 megabits per second when we're using a 160 megahertz wide channel. But then you'll notice as I kind of start to move away from the AP, even just so many feet, they start to lose that. And if they come back here and around the corner, you can see, yeah, very quickly we're starting to lose this. And we're still on 6 gigahertz, but we're at a pretty kind of poor connection quality here. Still about 500 megabits per second. But yeah, right there, they actually just jumped over to 2.4 gigahertz. So yeah, if you're putting this in and the client's really expecting a really high performance Wi-Fi, high performance internet, it's going to be really critical where you put that access point versus if we just take this access point and obviously move it to this side of the unit here and repeat that same process. You can see now they can kind of go anywhere in here and still be getting over 1,000 megabits per second. If they're right next to it, we're back up to almost 3,000 megabits per second. Now that's data rate. So keep in mind, I usually always my rule of thumb is anytime I see data rate, I always kind of divide that in half to like real world TCP throughput. But yeah, this is just to kind of show you how important it is to get that AP in the right spot, right? AP placement's important. That's my whole thing out of that rant.
Joel, we've
I
got
see this.
sorry,
Yeah,
Jerry, we've
please.
got a couple of the questions in the chat. So you're showing indoor designs right now. Could you do this for an RV park as well?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Actually, I think I actually have a demo RV park in here that we can show pretty quickly. And Joel, thanks for the awesome cabling work there. I appreciate it.
I was gonna
Yeah.
share this exact one with you. Looks like I already did a long time ago.
Yes. Yeah. I think this actually might be one that you designed. So it kind of comes around. Yeah. So Joel actually did this design, shared it with me, but I'm going to leverage this, and I hope you don't mind, Joel. I'm going to actually just duplicate this, and I'm just going to delete the APs off of here, and we're just do a quick design with your handy RV park here.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. So we're collaborating once again. Joel set up this project in the past. I'm just going to kind of clean this up a little bit here, and we're just going to start with just kind of the environment, and then we're going to add some stuff here. So I'm going to get rid of our wired clients. We can also model those in. And now we've got just some walls and attenuating objects. This is a pretty kind of rudimentary one, I would say, too. We could certainly do a lot more detail, but just to give you some idea of what we've got kind of modeled in this space, we've got some buildings, we've got some trees, we've got some RVs themselves. Obviously, you can get a lot more detail in here, but this gets us, good enough for a quick demo here. But let's say we want to model this RV park. What do you guys think? What would be a good AP that we should use for this type of environment for like an outdoor kind of setting?
P6HE.
Okay, let's go with the P6HE. And again, we can see those antenna plots here in 3D for me. But let's go ahead and select this. And
Jerry,
I'm just gonna,
quick question on the 3D antenna
yes.
graph that you just had. So I know you
Yep.
have the free version. Does the free version also show this, or is that a part
It
of a paid
does.
license?
It
does.
does,
Okay.
yeah. And I hear people all the time that say like, yeah, they'll sign up for just a free license just because they need to validate something with like an antenna. And, yeah, we kind of freely, make that accessible to you to be able to view those antenna plots. Now, if you do have the
Awesome.
paid version, I don't know, Joel, correct me if I'm wrong. I think there's some options to even like download some of the antenna plots from some of the like third-party antenna manufacturers and stuff too, where you can actually, if you're a 3D printer guy, you can actually print those out in 3D.
Not for Calix, but John, we should chat. We can flip the switch on that.
Yeah, but yeah, you can download some of them from certain vendors that allow us to do that. So yeah, if you want to be able to print this out. All right, so I'll wrap this part up here, but yeah, you could see pretty quickly we could build this out pretty fast here. Same kind of concept, and it does support multi levels and everything as well. One thing that I do think is pretty cool, especially with like an outdoor environment like this, is you can change what you're simulating as far as like the visualization height. So being that this is a fully 3D capable tool, I can come in here and actually right now, it looks like last time I was playing with this, I was actually at 16 feet. So let's actually bring this down to more of a ground level visualization. But if for some reason you need to do like a point-to-point link or show something higher up in the air, we can adjust that visualization height to show where we want to see the signal. So yeah, it's very flexible in that sense. Same kind of concept for the wiring side of things. So if we did want to wire all this up over PoE, I could go ahead and place a switch on here. Let's say maybe we just have a switch in this corner over here. And notice what it's indicating here is we're going to have some problems, right? A lot of these cables, if that's our only location to wire things to, it's going to flag any of those that are over that 100-meter distance, saying that those cables might be out of spec there. So we might need to look at getting more creative with the, some fiber or, adding some additional switches. But it'll help guide you through that. So as I add, maybe some additional switches in here, we can figure out how many switches we're going to need, where those switches need to be placed to make sure we can get everything connected and within spec here. Well, cool. John, I will turn things back over to you. Hopefully that's a good stopping point from my side.
Fantastic information, Jerry. Thanks so much, and apologies for pushing you along there. So I wanted to see if we can get to some questions, you guys, and just wanted to wrap up our piece. So a couple things just to align here. So all the material that you just heard from Hamana, from Jerry and Joel, coincides with the idea of picking and choosing the right products for the fit. You could use that tool set to help you along. Obviously, there are pros and cons to whatever product you select, whether it be a desktop or ceiling mount. The product uses, it will do the same thing for you as you showed in the RV park for outdoors. So the combination of these two things together will go a long way in determining what your next steps were, how you should synergize on a particular product or a couple product families. So we've covered all the challenges. We talked about some benefits of standardizing. We certainly went through some of the positioning, whether you would utilize the same positioning or not, that's entirely up to you. It's just an idea. And then finally, with the network design, I want to leave you with just another thought here too, that all of you have access to your success manager that can help you go through some discussions around predictive Wi-Fi design. They don't necessarily utilize the tool. It's more of just a general conversation. We would encourage you to lean on them when necessary or when it's a possibility. Last thing I wanted to do is just do a really quick poll, and then we'll get right into our Q&A. When you look at what you would like to hear about more relative to this conversation, relative to other things that are coming down the lines, look at the different options carefully, because we have the manpower and the capacity to provide consultations in whether you're developing a roadmap for your ideas, defining which systems, helping you with the network design. We certainly leverage the Hamina tool. I hope I made that pretty clear that as a partner with Hamina, we leverage their tool, as well as we would encourage you to consider using their tool for your network designs. We also have an opportunity for you to explore the different types of services or solutions that fit into either an MDU or a small business space. If you remember back in your selection, you had indicated, where you're moving next or where your market is moving to the next level. The last part is that this Consult 360 is what I just talked about. And again, please reach out to your success teams or ask for some support by selecting those options. We can connect the dots for you. So with that, I'm going to bridge over. We have about 10 minutes and we can go right into Q&A. And I'm going to start out with a question myself for the team, for the planning side of it. So clearly, Jerry and Joel, clearly on our systems, one of the things that we talk largely about is our overall RF strength of our products. But clearly, in an environment like we just went through with the MDU, is there a way to model the idea of turning down some of that power to how it would affect a particular design? I mean, could you utilize some of those techniques to show us a new design?
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Yeah,
I'll give
actually,
it back to you. Yeah, if you want to go back to your
yeah, let me
image.
pull up that one that we were just working on here, and I'll
And
just
while you're
real
doing that, so please, anyone else, submit your questions. Happy to answer anything that you might have on your mind, anything that might affect your utilization of these tools.
Yeah, so let's swap that back to a U6.3 here. And yeah, so the default here, we've got some different power levels configured. And yeah, I mean, at first thought, you might think, yeah, cranking the transmit power up is going to be, best, like full power all the time, right? But let's say if we do crank this thing up to something like 20 dBm, yeah, we get, a much larger kind of green area. But depending on what our goal is, if we're just trying to get users that are in this unit to connect to this AP, now we're actually interfering with a lot more larger area as well, right? So if we need to try to cover this entire building, and now again, you'll see as we start to place APs in here, even with fewer access points now, we're going to start to see we're going to run out of channels, and that channel reuse is going to start to be affected here even more quickly.
So there,
So you can see
that's a good point. Sorry to interrupt you, Jerry. I just
Mhm.
wanted to add something because somebody just included, like, can your tool help with channel planning?
Yes.
I
Yeah,
think it's pretty
absolutely.
straightforward. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, so not just the channel planning piece of it, but also the channel width piece of it, which is often kind of the more challenging piece, right? Is trying to figure out what is the optimal channel width that we should be using. And again, most people think, oh, we'll just use as wide of channel as possible, bond as many channels as you can. But in a multi-dwelling unit like this, you run out of channels, and then what you create is what we call channel interference. So then if we come into here and I say, I'm just going to override the system that's already optimized this, and I'm going to say, no, we're going to only use 80 megahertz wide channels. And notice now what's happening is we're fighting with airtime here, and we're actually needing to share these channels. That's what the yellow is representing there, is kind of dirty air, if you will, in the sense of co-channel contention is what we'd call that.
Oh, I wanted to remind also all the attendees, like when you model with Wi-Fi 7, you're introducing a whole new level of spectrum. And within an MDU space, we find that Wi-Fi 7 really is an ideal solution for when you're looking at MDUs, because you have more capacity offered, more capacity, more connectivity. Speeds are going to be improved, very similar to what Jerry showed you in terms of performance, but it also gives you the opportunity to support a large number of devices, which is another factor here in the MDU space. I think
Hey,
there's a
John, real quick, while we get on to the next Q&A session, I'm going to go ahead and relaunch the console poll just to give those who didn't get an opportunity to answer another shot.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, just scanning some others here. I know some of you guys have typed it into the chat window. So outdoor example, can you set the dB loss for some of the RVs?
Yeah. Yes, so that's kind of what we've done here is if we come into this project and we just look at that from the RVs, like I said, this is very rudimentary. We could certainly do this more detailed, but what we did in here was we created a custom material called RV, and then we're specifying an attenuation, which in this case, with it being an attenuating object, we're specifying as that signal passes through that object, we're absorbing 3 decibels per meter. So it's a dB per meter value there. So obviously the thicker the material is or the thicker the object is, the higher the decibels per meter is. But yeah, literally it's as simple. You set a height, a bottom height. So saying it's starting 2 feet off the ground, it's going up to 10 feet at the top. So an object that's 8 feet tall. And then if we look at this in 3D, we can kind of see that a little bit better here as far as the objects that we've modeled.
And
So that's
Jerry,
what that's looking like.
if I remember correctly, I did this project. This was just a hypothetical, but I was doing this with John Kicklighter from Calix. And if I remember correctly, I asked him, I was like, "Hey, John, do you know what the loss of an RV is?" And he said, "Yeah, it's about 3 dB per meter." So like he knew exactly what the number was off the top of his head. But typically, what you do is set up an AP, take a couple measurements, and you can calculate what that is really, really fast. But John had already done it because he's a pro.
Okay. Any other questions from
Yeah,
our attendees?
there's one from John Hardwick. So, Jerry, the question is there a library the ability to enroll third-party APs into Hamina, or is that not possible?
Joel, what do you think about that one? You want to take that one?
Yeah. So I mean, we are vendor agnostic, and we support whatever basically. So if you're swapping, let's say that there's a competitor's APs that are there already, and you want to get an idea for what a swap is going to look like, chances are their stuff is in our tool. So you could potentially drop their stuff in, and then maybe use that to make a case with your customer, like why it's time to upgrade. For example, you could put some older AP models in there and show what the roaming performance is going to look like, what the data rates are going to look like, what all that's going to look like, and then swap in for the Calix gear and show your customer, hey, here's what it's going to look like in the simulation with the new network. So yeah, anything that you need, let us know, and we will get that added. And by the way, there's at least 2 new models, I think, in the pike, coming down the pike from Calix soon. So yeah, Antenna Guy's on vacation right now for the summer, but as soon as he's back, we'll be getting those in. So there's going to be more Calix gear coming to Hamina really soon.
Okay, that's awesome. There's a second part of that question, which I think could be even a whole nother seminar. Is there a way to, once a plan was developed and it's time for real world application, is there a way to update actual signal strength data throughputs?
Yeah, good question. So typically, kind of the way that we handle that is instead of putting in like throughputs and things like that in Hamina, what you can do is you can go and perform a site survey. So what Jerry's been showing you has been what we call predictive modeling, or just sometimes network design, where he makes a model, we drop APs in, and we're modeling what we think the network is going to look like. Typically, the next step is after you have deployed the network, then you can validate it by performing a site survey. So that's when you walk around on site with a measurement device. So this is actually our office here in Helsinki. And you can see that back in October, I did a site survey here. And you can see where I walked and where I tapped on the map to tell the tool where I am. And then it automatically found all of the access points that are nearby. And the great thing about that is not only does it find my network, but it finds everything else. So you can tell how much interference you're getting from your neighbors and things like that. So it's an app that runs on an iPhone or an iPad, and then there's a measurement device that you plug into the iPhone or the iPad. You throw it over your shoulder, kind of like a messenger bag, and it does the actual data measurement gathering while you walk around with the iPhone and just tap to tell it where you are.
Awesome.
So everyone, I hate to be the bad guy. There's some really great questions coming in here in terms of closing this out. We're at the top of the hour. Thank you very much for your attendance. You all stuck with us for the whole hour. Very impressive. And many thanks to Hamina, to Joel, to Jerry. Will, thanks for your contributions on the questions. Loved all the feedback. Keep it coming. We hope we can build on this conversation in future webinars. Hope you guys have a great week and talk with you soon.
I will throw a link to this lovely design that me and Joel did during the webinar here. So if anybody wants to pull up the report, it's in the chat there. So yeah, that's another kind of example of how you can then distribute that information when you're done with your design.
Great. That's perfect. Thank you, Jerry.
Thanks, everyone.
Good day.
Thanks, guys. Cheers.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.